And finally, now it's discussion time. I ask the speakers please to join me here on the stage. Goed, ons het 2 mikrofone op die vloer, 2 roving microphones. I think I want to start off by congratulating Dr. Dreyer, Dr. de Kok, the organizing committee. What a wonderful spread of knowledge that they organized for us today. And I'm pretty sure that you are thinking of many of the aspects that were put to you. And now's the time to get more clarity on that. So wie gaan eerste wees? Waar kan ons die hande sien? Die ligte is bietjie in my oë. Julle sal die mense sien. Goed, jy weet, dankie.
Thank you to the speakers. I have enjoyed listening worldwide concepts. And I want to take you back to the willow tree. In 1800, man started to produce aspro because the willow tree produced it. In 1934, if I remember correctly, antibiotics were identified as a new way to treat human diseases. In 1960, more or less, the gene theory of our existence were published, and we started to understand life complexity completely differently. In more or less 1990, I think the soil complexity of microorganisms were started to define. In a teaspoon of soil, there's 10 to the power 24 different types of microorganisms in the soil. And they can affect us badly, or they can affect us well. I think that we will have to rethink that we can manage gene expression in plants within 20 minutes. And if
Henny, ek moet jou onderbreek.
Yes.
Jy kan nie nou jou produkte hier kom promoveer, jy moet by 'n vraag kom. Please ask a question now.
I want to ask the question. Is it not time that we rethink about the applications of what is the function of the plant? And I want to be very brief on this. The function of the plant is first to make carbohydrates as a feeding for human and for animals. And that on a farming community...
You must ask your question now, otherwise I'm going to rule you out of order.
Is it not time for the farmers to measure the efficiency of production of sugar on their plants on a weekly basis? It is very cost effective. Why have it not been introduced?
Thank
measurements.
You. Thank you. Our panel feels that they'd rather think about that one. And as to whether we really want to go that route today with regards to weed control, I'm not so sure. So, did I see a hand? You want to ask a question or you want to elaborate on that? Professor Egal, you're welcome.
Let me say that the presentations were well balanced from science, practical, and theories. Let me put it that way. My question is, with regard to, goes to Dr. Brian de Villiers, with regard to the ammonium sulfate's catalytic or helping the absorption of the herbicide. When we saw the reaction he showed to us that the ammonium sulfate is divided into 2, the ammonia side was the nitrogen side, and the sulfate side. And the sulfate side went to calcium, and it became a calcium sulfate, which is a salt. My question is how you can get rid of that salt. That question number 1. Question number 2 is the remaining ammonia, is it helping the plant to grow later on when it comes to nitrogen fixation cycle? Thank you.
Thank you.
The first part of the question was the calcium sulfate or magnesium sulfate or sodium sulfate, depending on the salt in water. Then basically, what further happens to it, I don't know if it just lies on the leaf surface or if there's a certain amount of absorption of the salt. But what is important to me basically is that it is not bound to the glyphosate and does not decrease absorption of that product. So it goes according to solubilities, and as the droplet dries on the leaf surface, we get binding of the salts to the sulfate before they can bind to the glyphosate, and that's basically what is important to us, and therefore we don't get a reduction in efficacy and absorption. I'm not quite sure of the second part of the question. I didn't get that.
Just repeat that again, Abdul.
The second part was that the ammonia site,
Yes.
the nitrogen site,
Yes.
we know that it plays part in the nitrogen fixation. Do you
Yes.
think that it will help, again, the regrowth of whatever plant you were treating?
Okay, so you're asking if that ammonium component would have an effect on plant vigor?
Yes.
Yes, definitely. I think it will have an effect on plant vigor, and that is basically, in the past it was believed that that's why ammonium sulfate works with glyphosate, is because of the plant vigor aspect. It makes the plant more receptive to the glyphosate. So definitely I do think it will have an effect, although it's very, very low quantities that we're talking about. We're talking about 1 kilogram of ammonium sulfate per 100 liters of water maximum. Very, very low concentrations, but yes, I think it will have an effect, but I don't think that's the reason why it's working so well with the glyphosate. That's a secondary effect.
I also want to rule that since it's been a long morning, that if any of our speakers feel that they want to elaborate on something that they brought to your attention and feel that didn't come across well enough following what others said, you're also most welcome, gentlemen. Any other questions? Dr. Dreyer, hier kan ons 'n mikrofoon, hier kan jy weet asseblief.
Mr. Chairman, just a practical question. If we can start off with Steve. In terms of you got I believe 420 plants per hectare. That's a fairly high plant stand for soybeans. Did you grow uprights there, no bushy types or anything of this nature? Because that can make a difference, with us. And also, is there any difference, to your opinion, in terms of determinate and non-determinate type of soybeans? Would you like to elaborate on this?
Test one. Okay. The soybeans that we grow in Midwest are determinate varieties. It's a group 4 and 5, so they're all determinate varieties. So once they are done flowering, they're not going to continue growing. The previous part that you asked about, why do we use 400,000 seeds? The population. What I want to say there, over the last what do I say, 15 years, basically it's been 10 years since I've done my studies, and that time the soybean variety, the seeds of soybean varieties that were grown at that time were much larger. Some of the newer varieties that are coming out are smaller seeds, so we're actually seeing that the guys are applying lower population. There were some studies done comparing different populations, and they're saying if you increase the population to over 400,000 seeds, you're actually just making the seed companies happy by giving them more money for the seeds. You're not really making soybean more competitive. If your question was coming from that angle, like would the competitiveness be helped by the higher populations? So anyway, so the answer to that would be no. The higher population doesn't pay off. And we stick with that 350 to 400,000 seeds. So that's kind of what's been used over the years. So what's the population of seeds that you guys will typically use out here?
300,000 and less. I believe Vessel will be probably the guy who can sort of comment on this one. Can I ask a second question, Mr. Chairman?
Please go ahead.
You've done a real good job in showing us, how we are going to drop in terms of yields and also money. But I believe that you also got some figures in terms of sunflower. Not that it's a sunflower conference, but just to almost underline the fact that this 2 to 2.5% is almost universally applicable. Whether it's a sunflower, whether it's soybeans, or whether it's maize. I mean, if you can just comment on this situation, because I think that will be a sort of almost like a guideline, Mr. Chairman. For if you delay your weed control, you are in for trouble.
Okay, so what is the question? The question is
sunflower?
What's
the effect in terms of sunflower, just to underline the fact that
right.
it's applicable.
We've done some work with sunflower, but not in U.S. I have a student in former Yugoslavia and Serbia, northern Serbia. They grow clear field sunflower out there. And we were looking at the determining the critical period as impacted by the pre-emerge herbicides. So basically what we were finding in there that the critical period with the pre-emerge herbicides, it's about a 3 weeks delayed than with the without pre-emerge herbicide. So, and from that particular study, we didn't actually put any graphs to determine whether it's a 2% or 2.5%. So I have to tell you that I don't know the answer to that part of the question because we haven't done it. It was really asked over there, and we actually published a couple of papers in some of the European agronomy journals, but we were not looking at the percentage of yield loss per every leaf stage like I've done it before with corn and soybeans, simply because they didn't really show interest in it.
More questions? There's a question there. Please, dankie, Yvette.
Hi. My question is actually posed more to the Protein Research Foundation than your guests. I'd like to know, Mr. Chairman, you talk about a 2.5 million ton production in the year 2020. What is the demand going to be in 2020? That'll be my first question. And then I think I'd like to know, I think a lot of farmers would like to know, what is happening with the Roundup Ready 2 Plus? When will that be on the market? What is the hold-up? Is the Protein Research Foundation busy with seed companies, busy negotiating with them? Because I know there are obviously certain problems there. And are you discussing endpoint royalties with the seed companies and with the grain handling businesses in South Africa?
Fair questions. I did touch on the demand for soybeans in South Africa. I mentioned that a few years ago when we were still battling to get to the first 500,000 hectares. Actually, I want to take you back to the very first step when we increased soybean production in South Africa from 100 to 200,000 hectares. I got a phone call at the PRF of some farmers who were pretty worried as to whether they should continue planting soybeans because the market was going to be flooded. And also, from the producing community, there were many worries as to what is going to happen to the market. Your question. The fact of the matter is that the oil crushing plants obviously did their homework well before they came to South Africa in such a big way as they did. Firstly, to give you some facts and figures, South Africa has been a net importer of protein for animal feeding since the early 70s. And that actually at a certain stage went beyond 1 million tons of annual imports of mostly soy oil cake because that was the ideal replacement of fish meal. Fish meal simply got too expensive. And then the Protein Research Foundation has as one of its main aims to promote and to fund research to produce more protein. That could also be single-cell protein for that matter, but protein for animal consumption in such a fashion that we are no longer dependent on imported protein. I said this morning that we are about just more than 50% local self-sufficiency, so there's a long way to go. My own personal calculations indicated that if we can increase, we only have a rate of crop rotation of about, I think it's 14% to 86% corn, maize at the moment. If we can get to 70-30 situation in 2020, that's when we'll have the 2.5 million tons of soybeans. Firstly, the demand for the protein is there. Secondly, the crushing capacity of the very latest technology worldwide is now available in South Africa. And you could always have a chat to Gerard Bridenan, who represents that sector on our board, and he'll give you more detail. But we are satisfied. And then lastly, obviously, the oil section. South African consumption of oil and fats exceed 1.2 million tons per annum. Of that, we import very close to 800,000 tons per annum. Soy is not high in oil, and therefore, I think our soy farmers are in a win-win situation. You will not have a problem for the foreseeable future with regards to meal, protein oil cake, and certainly we'll, not in my time, will we see a surplus of edible oil. With regards to the progress, yes, that I mentioned that there are some conditions precedent to our view of the possibility of 1 million hectares and hopefully 2.5 tons per hectare. And certainly, we also promote, sorry, I'll interrupt myself, we're also involved with canola production in the Western Cape, and there we have the same problem. Andre Strawn and I just returned from America and Canada, and we had a similar, well, we had a annual, it's the International Canola Conference. And a farmer, like we had today, delivered his paper, and he was very adamant that Canada, and for that matter also North America, would not have been where they are today with regards to canola had it not been for the, call it the Roundup Ready canola, which obviously is what it's all about. And that's why I also said that we're talking to the chemical companies. Most of them are present in South Africa, and we talk to them on a regular basis. We've also had discussions with the registrar, and we've also had various discussions with these companies in order to expedite Roundup Ready 2, as you've mentioned, and also Roundup Ready or other glyphosate or similar chemistry in the various commodities. Now, Mr. Tron, do you want to elaborate on your endpoint royalties? I'll briefly summarize what he's told me. And I think they had a meeting yesterday, Andries. There is a committee of all the relevant parties involved, and we sincerely hope that the endpoint royalty system will come into effect. Apparently, it looks as if wheat will be the favorite, and I also hope that it will be early next year, and that there are a few more problems they maintain with regards to soy. I think canola is going to be a bit easier because we have no local canola production in South Africa. Soy, we have a mixture of local production as well as imported. But yes, the answer is we're working at it, and we're adamant that although we are a very small part of the market, and I must put this to you, that we are pretty much aware that at the PRF that we produce the total amount of 0.3% of the world soybean production. Obviously, the big companies are not actually standing in line waiting for us to accommodate them. So we keep on nagging them, and that's the best we can do. And I think we're making progress. And hopefully, yes, you will see some progress in that regard next year. Any further questions, ladies and gentlemen? Anything else from you guys? That's me. Stephen, you want to add anything? Or what? Professor, you go ahead.
I don't want to hold you up before lunch. It's always dangerous. I threw basically two challenges out to you, or rather to the industry. The one was check on the chemical effect of weeds or any plant material for that matter on Rhizobium bacteria. The other one was keep an eye out for plants which you never before had on your fields, on your lands, like indigenous plants moving to the fields because of zero tillage. There's another aspect related to zero tillage I just want to raise here. One of the major aims of zero tillage is to raise the organic matter content of soil. And with herbicides, there's a direct link between herbicide activity and organic matter content in soil. We only use clay content as a measure of herbicide dosage for soil-applied herbicides because it's so convenient, easy to determine, and not very variable across a field. Whereas organic matter is the better predictor, it's acknowledged worldwide, organic matter is the better predictor of herbicide activity, but it's so variable across a field that you rather stick to using clay percentage. Now, if you're successful with conservation agriculture in raising significantly the organic matter content of your soil, you have to keep track of how it would influence the activity of soil-applied herbicides. Nobody is currently doing that research in South Africa. And for that matter, the activity of any pesticides applied to the soil. Insecticides would react in the same way to organic matter content increase in soil as would herbicides. Basically, it causes a quicker demise of herbicides because of increased microbial activity, and the herbicides and other pesticides applied to soil would also absorb much more strongly on organic matter than on clay content. So the industry should take hands on these matters and preferably investigate together.
When you've listened to Professor Reinhardt, you'll also know why we didn't bring any plant pathologists to today's meeting to present a paper. I have an idea that no-till or minimum till was invented by the plant pathologists because they're having a ball of a time with all the problems that's created by no-till as well. But then I always get in disfavor when I put this forward. Now Charlie's got another view. I want to ask the three researchers on my left. Two of you mentioned that there hasn't been any real great developments lately. You work with all the biggest companies in the world, all the leading chemical companies and seed companies. Is there anything exciting in the pipeline that we can be looking forward to? Stephen?
Can you define exciting?
Exciting from a farmer's point of view, not a plant pathologist's point of view.
Right. I mean, I can tell you, what's going on in the United States right now. But we have lunch, so I don't know how much time I want to really spend on that. The bottom line is that over the last 15 years, seed industry has been literally overtaken by the pesticides industry. There's very, very few seed companies out there, at least in the United States. I can't really speak for the other parts of the world. And all the big players are putting most of their research money into biotech. So hopefully next year we're going to see some dicamba-tolerant soybeans from Monsanto and BASF. They're working together on it. Monsanto is going to have their own form of dicamba. And BASF is going to have their own form of dicamba. It's going to be called Ingenia. We still don't know the name for Monsanto's dicamba. And those are the only two dicambas that you will be able to use in their soybeans. Don't even bother trying to use 2,4-D on dicamba soybeans. You will kill them, even though it's the same mode of action and everything, but it doesn't work. It's going to define all the stuff we used to know about modes of actions and everything, because these genes are put in plants on a specific spots, and they're only active ingredient specific. So if it says dicamba soybeans, you got to use dicamba. The Dow AgroScience is coming up with the Enlist Duo. In fact, next year in the U.S. we're going to see some of that. They've been all deregulated and approved, and we're going to see Enlist Duo. And you will have to use a specific form of 2,4-D on those soybeans. If you use dicamba on those soybeans, you're going to kill them. If you use status on those, you're going to kill them. So basically, the way okay, then let me add the two more companies. Syngenta is working on HPPD resistant soybean, which is mesotrione or Callisto resistant soybeans, and they are probably 3 years from release of those. And then Bayer, how you would say, Bayer has HPPD resistant soybeans as well. It's a different event than what Syngenta does, and it's going to be resistant to isoxaflutol, which is Balance herbicide. I don't know if you guys have Balance in here. In sugarcane, okay. Brian said in sugarcane here. So isoxaflutol is one of those HPPD's compounds that has been in the United States at least for, what do I want to say, almost 20 years. Anyway, so there will be what they call them a Balance beans in the United States that Bayer's is working on. And then the last of the big players is DuPont Pioneer. They're going to have what they called Bolt, B-O-L-T, Bolt beans. And they are going to be ALS and glyphosate resistant. So these big corporations basically took the seeds from the seed companies. They're adding genes into it. And for each one of those traits that they're putting into seeds, you and I will be paying for it. So that's one of the reasons why I believe that there's nothing going to be very exciting out there coming down the road. It's going to be all these new traits that are brought in with these different types of seeds. As far as any new modes of actions, any chemistries, Charlie did a pretty good job on outlining some of that. We haven't really seen any mode of action for last almost 20 years, because it's just harder and harder to come up with the new active ingredients. Despite all the computers, all the chemical engineering, and these guys are cranking, trying to come up with the new compounds, and they said it costs like over 200 billions to come up with a new compound, as opposed to do a couple of four back crossing, put a new gene into these varieties, which costs a couple $100,000. So that's why we're seeing industry pushing for all these new traits. And by the way, we're going to have these seeds that's going to have 4, 5, 6, 7 different traits in it. The price of seeds in the United States increased 300% in the last 10, 15 years. And the industry is actually getting their money or their return on their investments up front through the sales of traits via seeds. They use seed as a vehicle to make money.
Dr. de Villiers, you want to add to it? No. Anything on the horizon?
As far as adjuvants are concerned, I always get excited about adjuvants because we're getting newer and newer products that are add much more value to herbicides, but also to pesticides. So the adjuvant industry has grown in South Africa, but it's grown even quicker abroad. And if you look at the new adjuvants in America, for instance, you get a huge increase in efficacy. if using the correct product. So there are huge developments on the adjuvant front. Very difficult to register adjuvants in South Africa. They require a lot of data, but we're getting there and we're improving the adjuvant efficacy. So I think we can be looking forward to better weed control and better pest control in general with the use of good adjuvants.
Thank you. Professor Reinhardt, do you want to add something? The speaker who asked the question just now about what the PRF does about Roundup Ready 2, maybe since we have Kobus here representing the farmers, he could react to exactly the point that Professor Knežević made. You want it, you're going to get it, and you're going to pay for it. Have you made the calculations as to whether when you get Roundup Ready 2, you're going to produce more, but are you going to have a better gross margin at the end of the day? Kobus, wil jy reageer?
It's like I mentioned earlier, I don't look at yield per hectare, I look at net profit per hectare. So we must look at that. I think Corneille at the end, Grain SA, will help us with that course and things in the future. But we must be careful. But can I ask Prof. Stephen something?
Yes.
He asked me why did we spray at night, and I mentioned if you come to the west, you will see some of the conditions we live in, with wind speeds up to more than 20, 30 kilometers per hour, and sometimes the heat is going 32, 34 Celsius. He said we mustn't spray at night. Actually, can he explain it better to me? Because we start at we start spraying in the afternoon, like let's say 3 or 4 o'clock if it's cooling down a little bit, and till 7, 8 o'clock at night, maybe 9 o'clock, and we start early at the morning, 5 o'clock to let's say 10 o'clock, also 11 o'clock, before the heat is too much. So because we can't spray in the heat of the day.
Stephen, you were telling me that where you come from, you also have 35s and 40s. Tell us more. Is that working?
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, we were just chatting a little bit while somebody was answering the question. I wrote here on the paper, if you're using glyphosate, you want to use glyphosate between 9 o'clock in the morning and 5 o'clock in the afternoon during daytime. That's a Bible for my research. We've done research in Nebraska. I understand all the problems that you have there. We've done research in Nebraska about, oh man, what do I want to say here? 12 years, 13 years ago, there was a manuscript published in the Weed Science Journal. We had actually farmers, large farmers having issues like you face, and I sympathize with the situation. And they went and sprayed Roundup at night, and they're seeing reduction in glyphosate activity as much as 40%. So, and the way that's been explained is that the Roundup is a systemic product. Plants need to actively grow and to absorb that Roundup to move it throughout the system. At night, the plants are just kind of sitting there. The leaves, most of the larger broadleaf plants, the leaves at night will actually drop, and you have some issues with the coverage. So we actually had a graduate student that was doing a greenhouse study and a field study, and he was spraying Roundup every 3 hours around the 24-hour period. And we found that as you spray Roundup after 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you still have about 3 to 4 hours of daylight. And after you spray after 5, like at 7 or at 9, you're seeing a drop. And then the further you get towards the dark, and during the dark period, where we're getting as much as 40% reduction in the efficacy of glyphosate. And like I said, we published a manuscript on it, and that's the reason why I caught that when you were talking about your night spraying and everything. So you can, and that's actually the case, not just for Roundup. That's the issue with some of the ALS chemistries and some of the sulfonylurea chemistries. And if you're using soil-applied products, yes, please spray them all night long. For those, it doesn't matter because they're going to hit the soil, you know. But I don't recommend. In my research, we do a lot of work with glyphosate every year, or literally every day we spray some plots that will have glyphosate as part of a tex mix. And my technician knows that he cannot spray early in the morning and late in the evening glyphosate.
Okay, go ahead.
Can I ask him a second question about how much water they use per hectare?
Okay, the water per hectare, typically we go with about 150 liters water solution. Traditionally, before Roundup Ready crops, everybody was using 200 liters. That's been kind of a standard. And then also we've done some research across the United States and different universities, including mine, that are showing that actually having a higher concentration in the droplets of water solution of glyphosate, a higher concentration of glyphosate can actually get a little bit of a bump of the activity. It can improve activity of glyphosate by maybe 10-15% or something like that. And so then everybody after that, instead of using 200, because keep in mind, the agriculture in the United States is a Roundup Ready agriculture. This is the largest man-made experiment in the world, and I'm not a big fan of it, because now we're paying the price. We are the paying price for overusing, misusing, and abusing and raping glyphosate. Glyphosate is the best herbicide that the mankind ever developed. I don't think that anyone in our room here is going to ever live and see a better herbicide than a glyphosate. So because of everybody's using glyphosate, and we've done research showing that the lower volumes are actually helping the activity of glyphosate, and now people go either to 100 or 150.
Okay.
But I just want to make a comment, since I made almost like a little Greenpeace statement about the Roundup Ready technology in the U.S. Listen, guys, pay really good attention to what Charlie was telling you earlier. Learn from our mistakes. You know, farmers in the United States believed Monsanto. They went with the open wallets to Monsanto, and then now they have a problem. A lot of farmers, the best example is just go to southern part of the U.S. when they grow cotton. Cotton production was completely Roundup Ready for about 10 or 15 years, and then Palmer pigweed, which is Amaranthus palmeri, which was one of the species that Charlie had in his slide, developed resistance to Roundup. There was no other herbicides available because Monsanto drove everybody out of town. All the other companies didn't have incentives to re-register the products and everything, and they put a complete cotton production into one product, one active ingredient, one called glyphosate. The whole system fell flat on its face, and now what they're doing exactly the same thing with Liberty. Now we're going to have a problem with Liberty. I mean, the human stupidity has no limits, quite frankly. So, you know, and so what I'm trying to tell you here is that, you know, I look at the list of species that Charlie was showing there, and you have Amaranthus here, you have Sorghum halepense, you have Ambrosia, you have Coniza. Those are the 4 species that if you guys just keep using Roundup, I guarantee you in the next 5 years, you're going to have resistance in these 4 species. You know, if you just continue using Roundup. I understand Roundup is cheap. Roundup is cheap. I don't know how much generic Roundup you guys can have here. In the U.S., we can get a generic Roundup for as low as $10 a gallon, and we're using 1 quart, which is a 1 liter rate. So it's like a $2.50, which is exchange rate, that would be about 15, 17 runs of your money per 1 liter. I don't know, is that cheap for you or not? It is cheap for us. Huh? Right.
He'll use a few adjectives that I won't allow. So.
Right. So it is cheap, but it's a mother nature we're dealing with. The weeds are always going to win. I've been studying weeds for 20 years, guys, and you look across the crop protection discipline, the one thing that farmers have to do every year is spray for weeds. And we better get used to that and live with that fact. And if we think that we can just continue doing the same single mode of action, single active ingredient, and we think that's sustainable, wow, we better get our head out of the sand.
Stephen, while you have now said the necessary about Monsanto, you don't only have Monsanto in the US, you also have Kip Colors. And we had Kip Colors here 2 years in succession. In 2013, at the International World Soybean Conference, he was our guest. And there's some mysticism around him. Now, you being a very practical scientist, he was here again last year as a guest of, after all, you know and we know now that he belongs to DuPont Pioneer and John Deere. How is it that he can get 100 bushels, more than 6 tons per hectare every year? And how come he could achieve 161 bushels, very close to 7 tons per hectare, and nobody could ever do that again? Comment? You're a practical scientist.
Right. Yeah, we do have few guys out there that have some mysterious numbers that they collect, and I don't know really. I don't have an answer for that. I wish I do. We actually have a corn grower in Nebraska where we assembled a team of scientists, and we think we have pretty smart scientists in the country who were actually collecting just about any bloody data you can collect from his fields there. And we still can't figure out how can that guy grow corn that typically has 3 times higher yields than anybody else in the nation. So it just shows how we scientists are humans. We know a lot of stuff, but then a lot of stuff we just don't know.
Okay, more questions, and before we go to lunch, anybody? They will be here during lunchtime. Ladies and gentlemen, a hearty word of gratitude to our speakers. En terwyl hulle die verhoog verlaat, sal ons vir meneer Andri Stron vra om 'n paar bedankings vir ons te kom. Guys, I'll excuse you, and I'll ask Andri Stron to come and say thank you to everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm from that part of the world where Stephen would have most probably have worked for a lot of time to come. We specialize in resistance and not solutions. So
it's a job security for us.
Ladies and gentlemen, just a comment or two before the necessary thanks to the people involved here today. It's my utmost opinion that the success of the oilseed industry, soybeans, canola, etc., of the whole industry is to the benefit of all of us here present today. And I can assure you that the 75% of the success of a farmer is in this country depends on the excellence of the team that he gathers around him. We're totally interdependent from each other. It's not a chemical company or seed company on its own. If I as a farmer don't choose the best guys who's going to make me a success, they won't be a success. And we're going to have a couple of challenges on the way forward. That I can assure you. And I do think that gathered here today, we've got some of the best guys in research in the industry, not only the best producers in the world. And I really think, Stephen, we've got these guys are producing on land that you guys would most probably regard as desert, and especially in Corbus's area, some of those places does have its challenges. So, thank you for our speakers here today, Stephen. It's really fantastic to visit your country. And I would love to see in South Africa, if we've had that amount of money for research that you guys got available there, I do think we would have changed Africa as a whole. But with the limited sources available here, I do think our guys are doing an excellent job. Thank you for the information, and it's nice to have you guys as friends. And we really appreciate it.
Charlie and Brian, old friends of us, and I do think you've got a lot to do and to teach and to share with us in the future. Kobus, ek gaan hom nou in Afrikaans moet bedank dat ek kan verstaan. Thank you for your input here today. In every industry, that's guys that's walking the road, who's not prepared to take the lead. And I do think what I've seen from you and on your farm that you've done an excellent job in the no-till, in the taking the lead in an area on a subject that most people regard it as impossible. Good luck for the future. And in farming, we normally have somewhere in between. There's that slight off years with a little less rain, but good luck for the future. For the guys who's actually involved in the arrangements for today, special word of thanks to Dr. Jan Dreyer and Joost de Kok. Guys, you've played a pivotal role here today and for the next days to come, and to have our speakers here and everything in place. Jan, a really big thanks to you. Helping him was Gerard Keen and our personnel at the PRF office. Gerard, our gratitude to them, and please convey the message towards them. Contemporary events, people who's been involved here today, you'll see them around later. Thank you very much to them. And then a special word of thanks to our chairman, Gerard Schottermeyer. He would be unable to attend the last meeting, his other responsibilities. Gerard, not only for being an excellent master of ceremony, but also the introductory remarks. Just something for you as well. Hey, thank you. Thanks. And also for the pivotal role you played in driving this what's been happening here today, and for the next days. We thank you for that. We've got a couple of exhibitionists at the back there. Gentlemen, thank you for that. We're interdependable on each other, and thank you for open doors that we can come and speak to you and can have talks with you. Most important today are our guests, you people visiting us here today, our farmers. A big word of thanks to you. Without you, a day like this is a waste of time. We like to share our knowledge of our experts in front here. We try to arrange people that's of interest to you, and we try to achieve something in industry that's really, in the soy industry, you're growing exceptionally fast. In the canola industry, we've got a bit of a challenge ahead. But thank you very much for your time. And I'm really looking forward to the next year. Maybe we achieve that challenge in the soybean industry even quicker as you expect. And we pray for an excellent year that's coming your way. Thank you very much. Drive safely. I see some of the roads has been prepared or been repaired, but still be safe, and good luck to every one of you. You've got your beer tickets somewhere. There's something out there to drink and something to eat. Please join us in lunch. Enjoy the rest of the day.